Our guest today is Monsignor Charles Murphy, the head of the Permanent Diaconate Office in the Diocese of Portland, Maine. He has been our guest before, and he is here to discuss his recent book called Holy Hour Meditations on the 7 Last Words of Christ, Eucharistic Adoration. Monsignor, as always, thanks so much for being with us
I'm
today.
delighted to be here again and see my good friends.
Well, you know what? I was thrilled when I heard you were going to be here, and even more when we're going to talk about the book. It's a great book. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, the 7 Last Words of Christ would be a fabulous entry into the mystery of the Eucharist, which is the memorial of Christ's death and resurrection. And Eucharistic adoration has been a growing phenomenon in the Church in the United States, and there are not that many resources to help people to make holy hours. And so my book is intended to fill that need, to do actual meditations on the 7 last words in the presence of the Eucharist, and to have 7 witnesses to those words who incorporated the Eucharist in their life as an important part of their spirituality. So that was the genesis of the book.
And these witnesses, I'm very curious about them because I know some of them you have actually met.
Yes.
And they're real people who can inspire real people who are in prayer before the Blessed Sacrament. Could you tell us about some of those?
Well, I'll just mention one whom we know, Father Reed, Pope John Paul II, Blessed John Paul II, who was Pope while we were in Rome together. One day I visited Cardinal Descour in the Vatican, and he was a close personal friend of Cardinal Wojtyła for years, and Cardinal Wojtyła would stay with him in his apartment when he was visiting from Krakow. And before chatting with the Cardinal, I went into the chapel to pray, and then the Cardinal came out and he said, "Did you know anything, notice anything unusual about my chapel?" And I said, "Really, I didn't." He said, "Well, the floor is not the usual marble or terrazzo floor that you have in Italy. It's wood, and I put in a wooden floor because my friend Karol Wojtyła, I discovered, would be spending the whole night in prayer on the floor in front of the Blessed Sacrament while he was visiting me. And I didn't want my friend to catch a cold." So that was an example for me of devotion to the Eucharist.
I'll say.
Now, a lot of people don't understand Eucharistic adoration. What would people gain? What do they gain by sitting in front of the real presence of Christ, Eucharistic adoration?
Yes. Well, at the beginning of the book, I used 2 quotations. One is Teresa of Avila, her famous definition of prayer. Prayer is nothing but spending the time with a friend whom we know loves us. So it's spending time with a friend who we know loves us. It's as simple as that, a simple conversation with a friend who we know loves us. And I mentioned an incident from the Curé of Ars who saw a farmer visiting the church every day for an hour before the Blessed Sacrament. And the Curé of Ars said, "What happens when you're there? What's going on?" And the farmer, in his simplicity, said, "I look at him and he looks at me." So I think there it is.
Simple as that.
Yes.
As simple and profound
Yes.
as that. Now, we're in the midst of the Year of Faith, Monsignor, and obviously Lent is around the corner.
Yes.
Now that we finish up Christmas this weekend. This is a great resource for people in these times, the Year of Faith and the season of Lent, wouldn't you say?
I would say this, that the central mystery of our faith is the Paschal mystery, the death and resurrection of the Lord. And Isaac Dinesen, the famous novelist, said that we can really endure anything in life if we can make it part of a story. And our story is the Paschal mystery, death and resurrection. That's the story of our life as well as the model that Christ gave us. So death and resurrection, we go through many deaths. There's many times we leave things behind that will never reappear, but something takes its place that's greater and better through the power of God, the resurrection. That's the Paschal mystery that we celebrate in the Eucharist and in the Year of Faith.
I love that you explain things too within the book. You're standing and then kneeling in prayers. And at one point, and forgive me because I will not say this verbatim, but you talk about no words. There will be no words. You just sit there and there you are with Christ.
Exactly. I learned that from Abbot Keating. You know, he was at the Spencer here in Massachusetts, the Trappist Monastery, where sometimes in prayer we have to move beyond words and thinking to simply resting in the presence of the Lord and enjoying His presence in that wordless peace that comes to us. I think that's the goal of prayer.
Now, I have to tell you, and I promised you this before the show began, I'm going to get a number of copies of this for my good friends in Whitman at Holy Ghost, where they have perpetual adoration. But I know that people watching, perhaps want to get a copy of this book for themselves. Is there a way that they can easily obtain one?
I think through Ave Maria Press, their website, that would be the best way to do it.
AveMariaPress.com.
I noticed, by the way, that you did not say you were going to get one for your good friend who sits right to your right.
Oh, well, that goes without saying.
Okay, good. Monsignor, thanks so much for being with us again.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. It's a great book.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to give it to my wife once my good friend gives me the copy.
Thank you very much.
So that she can read it.
Pleasure to see you.